Welcome to the Credit Union Sales and Marketing Podcast. Your hosts, Bill McKenna, Paul Robert, and special guests discuss ideas for creating alignment in your sales and marketing efforts and ways to accelerate growth. Now let's get started.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Credit Union Sales and Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Bill McKenna, my co-host, Paul Robert. Say hello, Paul.
Hello, Paul. How you doing, Bill? Good to see you again, buddy.
Yeah, nice to see you. I'm going to work on some new entry. I got to come up with something new.
We need to.
I'm a little tired of the same intro every time. We got to come up with something a little different. Maybe I'll tell a joke to start.
Oh, no. Don't go there, Bill. I've heard your jokes.
Okay.
I've heard your jokes.
Okay. All right, whatever. So, hey, we have a special guest with us today, kind of a long-term friend and business associate, Mark Ritter. And Mark, nice to have you on as our guest today. And hey, you are the very first person we've ever had on that has their own podcast. So welcome, and why don't you tell us about yourself and, podcasts and all that good stuff.
Sure. My name's Mark Ritter. My day job, I am the CEO of MBFS. We are a business lending CUSO. Our headquarters is in Pennsylvania, which isn't that impressive because we're a completely remote organization with over 110 credit union clients and staff all throughout the country. And we help people with all things small business and commercial lending. And then my other gig, as you mentioned, I am also the host of Credit Union Conversations, a podcast that gets into all things credit union. We do a lot of lending talk, a lot of some business lending, credit unions, succession planning, a lot of CEO conversations. But you can find us just like your podcast on all the major networks.
Excellent. So how did you get into this business lending thing? Tell us a little bit about your background.
So I am one of the rarities in the credit union space in that I have been involved in small business lending now for 25 years. And I was at some banks before that. But I after in the late 90s, I was looking for a new career path in life and knew I didn't want to get into the big mega bank business banking, commercial lending operation. I liked more of a community situation. And at the time was when they changed the Federal Credit Union Act to allow for credit unions to make commercial lending more openly and to make it a business. So when I got into it, it was in its infancy, and it's been a roller coaster and an amazing growth journey.
I think we all share the banking background, right, guys? So I've been through detox. Have you, Mark? Have you got that all out of your system too?
I've been doing 25 years is a long time. That's been out of my system for quite some while. If I went to a bank, I think I'd probably get fired the first week.
But we talk about banks as being the devil, and carrying a pitchfork and whatnot and a pointy tail. But in actuality, they know small business lending. They know commercial lending. It's been part of their DNA forever, I guess, is fair to say. What are you seeing now, Mark, as the transition with credit unions? How much is it becoming ingrained in what makes a successful credit union these days?
So early in my career, when I went into a chamber of commerce or other business event, people would laugh at me that I was that credit union trying to do business loans. Mm-hmm. Today, it is much more normalized and not the shock of a credit union doing commercial lending that it once was. So it's really, I am happy to see the growth in the industry and how much it has taken off compared to those early days. But I always tell credit unions, we don't have, people sometimes put small businesses over in a box, but they're really just members, and they have this business need as opposed to oh, this great wall of, we have businesses over here and your consumer members over here.
I think that's a big misconception, and Bill chime in on this too, that, you know, maybe not at the top of the organization, Mark, but certainly as you get down further into a credit union and you start talk to people about business lending, I mean, their eyes gloss over and they're like, "Oh no, I don't want to go there," you know, that kind of a thing. There's almost an intimidation factor that needs to be overcome. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And more of it's a lack of understanding than
Right.
anything. Of these are the same people who are coming into your branches. And there's a few nuances as far as the credit and processing and making good decisions. But good, sound credit decisions are good, sound credit decisions. And understand now, if you're getting into the mega commercial real estate, the middle market
Right.
banking, but that's not who credit unions are serving. They're serving their members. You're just bringing in a bigger wallet share.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's still all about the relationships. I think what you're saying is so true. And that's what we talk about on this podcast all the time is the relationships. We build great relationships with members. And I think, Mark, of course, you're the expert in what credit unions are doing, and we're going to dig more into that in a minute. But I still think it's about how they connect with local businesses, local people. And I think people want to talk to somebody that is friendly with them, someone that they trust, someone that's in their community. And I think, unfortunately, you know, some of the bigger banks don't have that impression. You don't get that from them. However, there are some good banks out there, community banks that are doing a good job at business lending as well. But ultimately, I think what you're saying is it's about relationships, isn't it?
When I first started working at credit unions, I was a suit and tie guy. Typical young banker, suit and tie. This is what I do. Let's sit down. And I quickly realized in the credit union space, it is about people want the relationships and they want to feel comfort and they want to feel like it's a conversation with somebody. And when I would have those dress down days, it was like it was a completely different conversation and connecting with people because they consider their credit union an advocate for them and an offshoot of them, as opposed to the banker in the suit that it's more intimidating. It's him over there. It's me over here. But in the credit union, we have such an opportunity to connect with people and relationships that sometimes in the commercial banking space or investment banking space, you don't have. And we're really good at that in the credit union space. We have the relationships, people like us. We just sometimes need the little bit of extra resources to push it over the top. But 90% of the infrastructure is there, and that is you, the relationship, you know your community, you're part of your community. We're just able to help people expand to that last 10%.
You mentioned you have over 100 credit unions that you work with. Maybe was it 110, did you say?
Yes.
Number?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell us about those credit unions a little bit, you know, and then we'll get into some more specifics. But what size are these credit unions? Are they, 100 million to X, or, what do you see when someone gets into commercial lending? Tell us a little bit of the process of who typically you talk to.
It is really the bell curve of credit unions is our client base. I would say who works with the typical is maybe that 250 million up to $1 billion is kind of that frontline small business community. But we've also in the last few years really expanded our network, working with smaller credit unions and CDFIs in particular on helping the small business community, because they are very mission-driven organizations. All too often, somebody says to me, "Oh, we're too small. That's for the bigger institution." But there's always somebody smaller. There's always somebody bigger. And no matter what your size, you have members today. There is not a credit union in the country that does not have members today that either maybe they own investment property, they own a small business, or they're in a house that has a small business. Now, when you get into the larger credit unions, a lot of them are very good at connecting with the small business community, but sometimes they'll also venture up into maybe some of the larger commercial real estate, some of the larger projects in your community, which is perfectly fine. We in the credit union space, we're not a monolith. We can do many things. And at MBFS, I've really driven us so that we're not a monolith. And we have deals up to $40 million on our books. And we have, $20,000 car loans on our books. So it's really that entire space. One of the more intimidating things about business lending for a credit union is it's such a broad marketplace and such a broad term. So, and I always say, if you think of a car loan, think of the most complex car loan a credit union could give to the most simple car loan a credit union can give. It's the same product. You're giving one car to a person or two. Sometimes maybe they have a cosigner, and you're taking the title and they pay it back. But in business lending, that could mean the person who has a lawnmower and they have a full-time job and they're mowing grass on the weekends, or it could be a skyscraper in Manhattan and everything in between. So sometimes even the biggest of credit unions have to narrow down the niche that they're going to serve, which is intimidating to people because that means you're telling people no.
Yeah.
We're not in your segment. But that's okay. No business owner, no real estate investor expects every institution to be able to help every single person. That's just part of what we do. And sometimes credit unions get uncomfortable with structurally saying no to people.
No, absolutely. Yep. Hey, Mark and Bill, sorry if I'm jumping in on you here, but would you mind approaching this as if, Bill and I are CEOs at a $250 million credit union? What's the thought process? What's the decision making, the go, no go decision making process? And then what role do you play? And then what role would we play in deployment of that?
Sure. I'll give you my ideal relationship. And that is what I always tell people. You have the relationships, you have the members. But what a mid-sized credit union doesn't have, or the economics don't make sense, is infrastructure, expertise, and scale and systems.
Right.
Much like any other CUSO. So we want that member and the small business owner to be able to say, I got it from Main Street Credit Union, they're my people. But we have the systems and people to underwrite loans. We have the systems and people to document loans. We have the systems and people to service loans. Heck, we even have a team of originators who could help bring people to you. But we're not a lender. We're not a credit union. And we want to help support those people bringing it together. So that's really that ideal scenario. Now, in the old days, when I first started up into the credit union space, you just hired a CUSO, you flipped them the keys, and that was it. In today's world, there's much more emphasis on checks and balances on vendors. So you don't have to be an expertise on everything that we do, but you have to be able to have checks and balances and controls over what we're doing, much like any other vendor. And that involves due diligence. In our space, sometimes people do third-party reviews on an annual basis. So it's not, the old days. I remember $20 million loans being sent out, and it was just a who could hit reply fast enough got the deal. So you have to do a little bit of understanding, but the threshold isn't as intimidating and it's not as high as for that people think. So you have to understand what you're getting into. You have to have controls over us, and we can help build scale to your operations.
Does that credit union have any additional resources that they need? Do they need to add any staff, Mark, or do you take care of
Yeah.
all of that?
Here's just a quick shout out to our sponsor, ironistic.com. Hey, in today's world, everyone knows the importance of having a great website and having an integrated digital marketing plan. If your credit union, community bank, or any other company is looking for that help, I can highly recommend ironistic.com. Check them out.
Most of the time, somebody at the credit union is helping, maybe in the lending operations area. That may, for the small and simple deals, sometimes they're having a conversation with a member. But that's more of a checkbox scenario. Tell us what you're looking for. We'll get the information and get it to us. But some people throw everything at us to begin with. And then as you grow and the program matures, then you can start pulling things in-house.
Yeah.
But generally, to start out, we really need some administrative help back and forth for dealing with some of the mechanics and logistics and getting loans approved and getting appraisals ordered and approved and things like that to get the deal closed.
Yeah.
What are you seeing as far as good information, by the way, Mark? What are you seeing as far as bottom line for credit unions? How does this affect their bottom line? How does it affect their loan portfolio? And I know enough about this and work with people participation, so it's not like, if they do come across a larger loan, they can have part of that. Maybe you could talk about bottom line, how it works, and also, what it does for credit unions that do choose to go into business lending.
Yeah, absolutely. What you'll see is people involved in commercial lending have a higher ROA and a higher loan to share and a higher membership growth would be compared to credit unions that are in shutdown mode and absolutely do have no program. And one of the keys that you mentioned there is I always ask credit unions, who are you saying no to? And whether it can be because of location, size, or just you don't have the program, not saying no to somebody and being able to help them, that you're maintaining that member. I mentioned I got into this space 25 years ago. I made a career. I am here today because at the time we were one of the few credit unions offering business loans. People said no to their member, and they went down the street to somebody who could take care of them. And what they quickly found is that entire relationship moved.
Went with it.
Because a small business owner is not worried about today's loan. They're worried about tomorrow's loan. And this is going to be somebody who's with me for the next loan, for the next transaction, throughout the life cycle of their business. And, thankfully, it was probably a little bit easier 20 plus years ago than it was today because there's more credit unions involved in this space. But if you're saying no to people, we don't provide a service, and they go to somewhere else that does, that relationship is most likely burned, bridges burned for the long run.
And that depth of relationship. Yeah, and we were going through that when we were looking at a lot of credit unions I work with, the CRM products where, it's interesting. Someone walks in a branch and Bill McKenna walks in and he's got a personal account or whatever, or he's doing transactions online. And all of a sudden they don't realize that Bill McKenna owns a business. Actually he owns a business, right? There's an opportunity there. And how you get that, it's so important. Do you Do you find a lot of credit unions then, are you seeing the interest in business lending rising with credit unions, like more want to get involved?
Over the past year, we have signed up more clients than at any other period in the CUSO.
Wow.
And part of that, we've really seen it on a two-way street. First is liquidity is rebounding back to normal levels. And the second piece of that is consumer lending is struggling compared to some other segments. Or even if your originations are fine, your runoff from the heydays of the pandemic, you can't keep up with the loan runoff. And people really are looking at business lending as the way to supplement the loan balances and the loan volumes. And it's kind of that last frontier for some people as far as how do we keep the doors open? How do we survive? How do we grow? There's only so many levers to push. And you can only keep so much, compete so much with the fintechs and Amazons and everybody else out there providing financial services. But that small business piece for the foreseeable future is still going to be a local and regional business around your branch.
Right. A lot of your lending that, the CRA market have obviously slowed down tremendously with the amount of remote people. So what types of loans are you seeing coming through the CUSO? Are they business lines of credit, equipment loans? Are they, I'm working with a credit union down in Florida that we just finished a whole bunch of stuff for their business lending people. So what are you seeing? Like what types of loans are coming through and seem to be the most popular these days for business owners?
What has really slowed down, not surprisingly, is the largest of the office spaces in the big cities and suburban office parks. And those some of those loans are struggling, and that line of business isn't there. But people working at home, they order online. Warehouses have been booming. I don't know. My kids, they're looking for places to live, and there's not less of. They're struggling. Apartments are still very solid. Surprisingly, retail space is very strong. And one of the most underutilized segments is a lot of businesses were formed during the pandemic years. A lot of people went and started their own business, and those businesses are maturing into their next growth phase. So what do they need? Working capital loans. They need growth loans. And what's the best program for that? The SBA loans. Loans guaranteed by the small businesses, because there's a lot of small businesses out there in that growth phase. They're kind of out of their startup years, right, and now need to take those next steps.
How are you seeing credit unions manage those relationships, Mark, cultivate those relationships? I mean, we talk about challenges with growth, and one of the ways, as we've established here, is by deepening and broadening relationships. How do you see credit unions doing that specifically with these small business owners like we're referring to?
Well, there's really a two-pronged strategy to that piece. Most of the time, when I get a mortgage through a credit union, they say, thank you. They shake my hand. And as long as I'm making the payments each month, everything's fine. Mm-hmm. Under the small business scenario, that is not how it's made. Like, you actively are managing these relationships and talking with them. So as time goes on, you are going to need to have people dedicated to talking and building these relationships and expanding them. And we just went through a liquidity crunch at credit unions. And the most underutilized piece is credit unions going after small business deposits. That's where the money's made. Mm. And in the banking world, that is sometimes what they lead with, as opposed to the loans. In credit unions, we've historically had so many deposits people kind of said, I don't want those relationships. I don't have the branches. What has changed is the access to technology and systems. 25 years ago, the core systems were horrible. It was very difficult to provide business services to a credit union as a credit union. Now, technology, systems, people are there. There's a great CUSO out there, True Treasury, that their whole focus is helping credit unions on business services. And there is nothing better that a credit union can do than not just focus on business loans to supplement it, but build that base of low-cost deposits that's sticky, as opposed to the CD special for 9 or 12 months that you're constantly having to reprice to keep.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, that makes so much sense, because business owners want to be connected, as you said, to one organization that can help them with all of that stuff, cash flows and, taking, obviously doing transactions, merchant services and all of those things. So makes a lot of sense. We have a few more minutes. And Mark, credit unions, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people listening to this that say, we've been talking about this. As a matter of fact, a credit union I'm working with in Indiana right now approached me after a seminar I did, and they said, we've been thinking about business services. What do you think? And I said, well, I've got a guy. So, and Paul, you just mentioned you've got a credit union talking about that. So if a credit union wants to get started, what do they do to contact you? What do you suggest as those next steps?
Sure. I always like to not necessarily talk about our services first. They can connect with us on LinkedIn, on markritter.com, on MBFS.org. And I always like to have those conversations about the goals and where you're at now, because also, much of that first few years of marketing are internal resources. You're not having to go out and sponsor the 4th of July fireworks in your town. You have an incredible base of people between the vendors that you work with, and the teller line can usually list everybody who owns rental properties or owns a small business. So we really want to talk about who you are, where you're at. If you need the small business lending to survive, I don't know how much I can help a little bit, but your credit union usually has some bigger issues than just a new product or service. Mm-hmm. If you're in a stable spot and want to grow, maybe you're in a rural marketplace and you want to go deeper, that's fine. If you want to go into some bigger areas, other markets, that's good. But sometimes maybe you also want to diversify. If you can purchase loans in some other areas, that hedges your credit risk than maybe the town or county that you're in. So it's really about having that initial call to set up goals. The functional part of setting up business lending is the easiest project you could ever imagine. There's not all of the rules and regulations and that you get into consumer lending. So you have a lot of freedom, but and you have so many options, and it's really talking to the people to figure out, where do you want to head? How can we help you get there? And what's a good path and strategy? The logistical part of it will be the easiest project you ever have. And in 6 to 8 weeks, you're live with business lending.
Boy, that's music to people's ears, isn't it? It's the easiest project they'll ever have. Great to hear.
Sure. Yeah. When we talk about sales and marketing, Paul and I started this podcast because we are firm believers that many times the associating sales and marketing together and understanding how to put that together, Paul's expertise in culture training and all the things he does, and mine in marketing, it sounds to me like then what you're saying is, to get started, a lot of those relationships they have might be people they know already or have had relationships in their community. But probably down the road, to really grow this, and I'm assuming the ones that are being very successful at this, they do have some people now that are involved in outreach, and whether it's one person or a couple, and they're really working this because of the great opportunity it has for growth for them. Would that be true?
Absolutely. Serving your local business community is a proactive sales effort. It is not simply a Facebook announcement or putting it on your website or a flyer in the branch. It is a conversation and it's a proactive communication with people as opposed to some of the consumer products that are maybe more reactive compared to advertisements and things like that.
Yeah, makes total sense. Hey, this is a great conversation. I'm confident we're going to have a lot of people that are interested in contact you. I know you just gave your information a while back, but when I had that thought about sales, I figured I'd throw it in. One more time, just tell them how they can get in touch with you, and then we'll wrap up today. And we'd love to have you back sometime to talk about some more of this at some point.
Absolutely. I could talk for days about this, but I realize people would hang up and stop listening. So connect with me, Mark Ritter, MarkRitter. You can connect with me at markritter.com on LinkedIn or go to our website, mbfs.org, and connect with us there, and we'll set up a conversation just to see where you're at and what your vision is for the road down the road.
Great stuff.
That'd be great.
And what a need you're filling. Way to go, Mark.
Thank you.
Appreciate what you're doing and being with us today.
Thank you. I enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, we did too. Thanks, Mark. Hey, we'll catch you next time on the next episode of the Credit Union Sales and Marketing Podcast. Talk again soon.
See you later, everybody.